Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Your Excellency, President Dr. Vjosa Osmani-Sadriu of the Republic of Kosovo, dear Minister, Ambassador, dear guests, everyone else. Thank you for coming here today. Today, we're going to present Kosovo's first voluntary and inclusive NDC. And in this event, we have the honor to have Her Excellency President Vjosa Osmani for an intervention and a keynote speaker, followed by a presentation and a panel discussion on the National Kosovo NDC, that is the first voluntary and inclusive NDC. Person, please.
Gentlemen, dear Deputy Special Envoy for Climate Change, Mr. Gorson, dear Mr. Kuplan, dear friends of Kosovo, dear Minister, everyone that is present with us today. Kosovo's very first inclusive and voluntary national determined contribution, NDC. Therefore, it is truly my big honor to open this event at the time when the entire world is gathered here to discuss ways how and ambitiously meet the 2050 targets. For Kosovo, our means an opportunity to share the rest of the world. It is an opportunity to have and to make our climate action. On this note, I would like to start by thanking our partners, GIZ and UNDP, as well as the NDC partnership for having made the preparation for our NDC and the presentation of today possible. In the post-Paris Agreement era, have played a significant role in shaping the global response to the defining challenge of our climate change. As we look towards the future, we find ourselves at a very crucial juncture. The 2050 goals set forth in the Paris Agreement should not be mere aspirations, as the strongest call to action demands immediate and unprecedented efforts. Extreme weather events or disruptions to ecosystems and communities around the world, the evidence of climate change impact is all around us. The window catastrophe is unfortunately narrowing, and the need for enhanced ambitions has never been more pressing. And again, that the time to act is now. I will not be repeating that. Believe that ambition is even bigger. We need to be more compromised in our efforts to enhance climate. COP and national cooperation and joint global determination is aimed to be a countries regard power converge to discuss, negotiate, and set the course for a sustainable future. Each, of course, is indeed a milestone where we measure progress, confront challenges, and identify opportunities to renew the commitment of the countries around the world to the shared goals outlined in the Paris Agreement. However, because of Russia's blockade, Kosovo is not a UN member. That means we are party to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. This kept our country out of high-level discussions year after year. However, it has never faded our commitment and our dedication to do our part of the work. We always found the work a way to be heard, and we always will. We remain restless in our ambition and unwavering commitment to ensure our rightful place in the global climate discussions, but not only. We This is the only way forward because it is only through inclusion, no matter how, only quality and participation, that we can become successful in our better change. We often hear the expression climate change knows no borders. It is therefore high time that representation at the table, support, and finance borderless. Nonetheless, more often than not, even those in charge of climate global policies and the ones leading the climate fight tend to forget about the broader picture of the challenges we're facing. But we know too well, no matter how small or big a country is, whether in the UN or not there yet, our success, your success, respectively, the individual success of countries will mount to the collective success of our planet in combating climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, coal, boost renewables, and promote innovation. These objectives are outlined in the Energy Strategy of the Republic of Kosovo 2022-2031, the National Energy and Climate Plan, and the new pending final approval. Yet, today marks a significant milestone in our sustainable and resilient future. I'm thrilled to stand before you on the occasion of introducing Kosovo's vision and ambition as part inclusive and voluntary, nationally determined contribution to combat climate change. This document confirms our steadfast commitment to contribute to the global fight against climate change. Kosovo is committed into the ambitious 1.5 Celsius target, and we are currently developing first inclusive and voluntary NDC built on ambitious climate policies that aim to reduce emissions by up to 49% by 2030 compared to the 2016 levels. Respectively, in our plan transition, we envision an energy sector with at least 35% renewable in gross electricity consumption by 2031 and a significant reduction of emissions in key sectors, agriculture, waste. Kosovo understands well the importance of playing this existential battle. With that in mind, we have national change. It's turned into joint forces to identify scenarios that help us make significant miles forward, day after day, in our climate change. In addition, we are now working towards of the law of the National Energy and Climate Plan, and the plan is to adopt the first law on climate change in our country very, very soon. So soon we will also become the biggest capacity project supported by the United States Millennium Challenge Corporation, as well in the Balkans for central heating with solar panels. As we look forward, its very first strategy on climate adaptation by 2024, building on existing lines in the climate change strategy and the agriculture and forestry strategies. This strategy will focus on risk mapping, forestation, and the creation of an early warning system to address climate threats. For so much more, certainly a lot of space for innovative projects. And this is the perfect opportunity to discuss forms this could be done through would ultimately enable technology and knowledge transfer, but equally as important, the necessary financial flows. In pursuit of this, there is an absolute necessity to bring everyone and to leave no one behind. Clear. We've chosen our path consists in decarbonization, renewable energy efficiency, and in circular economy. While the will green transition to further empower the idea of a greener Kosovo is evident, we all know that it takes way much more than that to actually win the case. One thing is clear, us out of the room has also meant leaving us out of instruments that could have helped my country cope with the climate change. In the face of leave no one behind, it is high time the practice reflects the ambition. What we have reflects our do things better and to act smarter. But this we will not make it alone. We constantly work together. For Kosovo, the most pressing challenge right now lies in the limited access to key climate financing mechanisms, including the UN funds. And in this journey, the smaller countries will need the help of the larger ones. At this point, the Image Fund to deliver this. With the good news coming from the opening of this year's COP, I say that global leaders need to find, and that is deliver for all. Because unfortunately, Kosovo is not resistant to climate hazards and risks. This particularly relates to floods and storms. About 35% of our country's territory is exposed to a significant flood risk, impacting 18% of our population. We are addressing these challenges through ongoing risk mapping projects, forestation efforts, and the creation of an early warning threats. On the other hand, our climate under every emission pathway scenario be hit the most due to the regular exposure to serious droughts, water stress, and with the scarcity, our critical is at critical risk. On the other hand, although we're the fifth largest proven reserve of lignite, we have nonetheless committed to keeping lignite and see towards a greener future. Moreover, having conducted numerous studies, worked with some of the best regional and international experts, aligned all of our legislation with the EU acquis standards, developed drastic limitations apply to us when it comes to accessing climate adaptation financing. This puts Kosovo in an uneven level playing field compared to the countries of the region and seriously Kosovo is determined to move to the forefront of the global fight against climate change. However, we also need many of you, the help of you to stand by our side. This first voluntary NDC we are presenting today is a testament to our commitment to a sustainable and resilient future. We are proud of climate finance, but we also remain hopeful that with determination, innovation, and international, we will ultimately overcome these hurdles and pave the way for a green Kosovo. Now is the time for bold and transformative action. Let us not be defined what we have not met, but what we can and will achieve together. The decisions we make today will echo in time, shaping the world we leave for generations to come. So let's make sure that top endeavors, yet that they become our shared future that is not just sustainable, but also inclusive and very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam President, for those words. We're pleased to present to you now, before we go into the panel discussion, a presentation that we prepared with the Climate Change Council Secretariat through the help of the UNDP. This is the first voluntary NDC that Kosovo prepares. I'm going to about the NDC and a couple of key facts in all the sectors that are relevant to greenhouse gas emissions. Facts for those who might not know Kosovo very well. But what is worth mentioning is that Kosovo, as the youngest country in Europe, is going through a transition to alignment with the EU green agenda. So a green economy, but also a transition in which it needs to be a just transition because of the situation, the unique situation that Kosovo faces itself. Now, this is the target or the relevant to the Paris Agreement, the 1.5 degrees, that the sea is modeled in a way that serves commitment to the 1.5 degree of the Paris Agreement, and at the same time, reductions all over sectors by 2030. That means go through a transition up to 35% renewables by 2030 in the gross consumption of electricity. Of course, there's a lot been happening in other non-energy related factors, follow and transportation, and also waste sector. But to reach uh, climate finance, and that means for mitigation, 3.8 billion to 2030 yet. For a lot of need, and climate adaptation, in fact, is recently part of the climate change agenda in Kosovo, and rightfully so. To achieve that, climate finance, the key challenge the having no access to the key climate financing mechanisms such as vertical funds of Green Climate Fund, Global Inventory Facility, Adaptation Fund, all the funds that are multilateral funds that are related to implementation of of course, and the convention overall. Um, Nonetheless, as you can see today, Kosovo still remains committed to the ambitions that it has, different climate policies. Into this, I think is better for the presentation. So what are those policies? In the legislation part, Kosovo has done quite a lot. So first of all, Kosovo signed the Sofia Declaration, which is a carbon neutrality by 2050. And to really have that vision of decarbonization, especially in the energy sector, Kosovo prepared all the needed legislative framework, that is the climate change law, the energy strategy, but also the National Energy and Climate Plan, which is reported to the Energy Community Secretariat. That said, and overall, when we modeled what are the emissions levels that could be reduced by implementing this legislation, both primary and secondary, we see that there's a chance to lower emissions up to 48% by 2030, equivalent to the reference year of Kosovo, which is 2016. In addition, it's worth mentioning the Kosovo, which is the global renewable energy sources and energy efficiency pledge at COP. When it comes to the mitigation sector, Kosovo is heavily dependent on coal usage for electricity production, and overall rate heating to 71% of total emissions in the energy sector come from electricity generation, which makes about 92% of country's overall emissions. And with these measures that Kosovo is introducing, we see an increase of up to 35% of renewables in the end usage by 2031. How do they achieve that? Well, 600 megawatt of solar, 600 megawatt of wind, which for some of you might not seem a lot, but it's quite a lot considering the domestic demand that Kosovo has, through competitive auctions and EPC contracts. Auctions actually are ongoing right now. These auctions are very favorable. There's a power purchase agreement for 15 years, guaranteed purchase price, 30-year land lease, guaranteed connection with the transmission system operator, and of course, adhering to the principles of energy democracy, we want to make sure that the citizens of Kosovo also benefit from the just transition by introducing quite a high intake of rooftop solar and a partial phase out of the lignite plants. I talked about auctions earlier. Ongoing, there's a 100 megawatt auction, and you can see over here that there's also a plan to have further this year and in the year after. But for that, so there's a total of 1 billion euro financing that has not been met. Her Excellency already mentioned the very unique project that Kosovo has, the battery storage by the USMCC. This is the first of its kind in the region and beyond. This really allowing this high penetration of renewables and stabilizing the grid. And I think it is going to ultimately lead to better energy security, not only for Kosovo, but for the region of the Western Balkans in general. That said, in addition to mitigation efforts in the energy sector, Kosovo has committed to mitigation efforts in other non-energy related sectors, planning to reduce illegal logging by 70%. In the waste sector, reducing methane emissions from lowering landfilling by 2045. We will have less than 10% of landfilling compared to the current level, which is 90%. And that is because we also have signed the Global Methane Pledge, committing to lower our methane emissions. In the transportation sector, for penetration of a lot of change of the vehicle fleet by having more hybrid and electric cars by 2030 as the transportation multimodal transportation strategy foresees. But what is very unique in terms of transportation policies in Kosovo is domestic electrification and of the railway system, the railway lines domestically, but also internationally. There's this very innovative, creative. We have, I call it decarbonization from my perspective, because it will replace quite a lot of heavy truck transportation, transboundary commerce, but also passengers, by having the railway from Pristina to Burgas connecting Corridor 8 and Corridor 9, and ultimately leading to higher regional integration of the markets, but also taking out of the way a lot of heavy trucks transportation and individual vehicles that frequent a lot that route. That, of course, is also in need of financing up to 1.4 billion euros, and we're currently working on assessing the data on the lowering of emission from this project alone. Mitigation. There's quite a lot of projects. Legislation is in place. Projects already implemented and in the pipeline, but not much has been done adaptation until 2 years ago. 2 years ago, through the Climate Change Council, we began looking at climate science to inform climate policies and then also projects. To do that, we've seen a couple of climate models, and under every emission pathway scenario, so we will face a risk in droughts, the number of dry years, especially in the western region where we have the wide Drin Basin, but also where we have our agriculture. That means that we will really be facing quite a lot of critical issues on food security and also water scarcity. And we've seen that in order to implement all that, only for the Dream Basin, 700 million euros are needed in adaptation, not taking into consideration water reservoirs, irrigation, afforestation, etc., which takes the value up to 1.5 billion euros, which is much needed. So in conclusion, Kosovo already has done its homework in legislation, primary, secondary legislation, projects that already are implemented and are in the pipeline, auctions for decarbonization of the energy sector and non-energy related sectors. It is facing droughts. This year, we had even tragic loss of life and up to 9 million worth of damages and more in the previous years. Our agricultural sector is at risk. Water scarcity is one of the issues, and still it has no access to a lot of multilateral funds that are needed for adaptation. We witnessed an agreement on the loss and damage fund this COP28. Kosovo is very far from even thinking on how we can access that fund because we don't have access to other funds that were already existing, let alone the loss and damage. So with emissions lowering, with adaptation needs, the total that is over there still remains to be tapped. Madam President mentioned already, leave no one behind. And I think through these policies, Kosovo is not leaving the global community behind because it's doing quite a lot in mitigation, in global action. But leaving no one behind but Kosovo, then is that really the principle? Thank you so much. And now I invite the panelists for a discussion related to the figures that we presented today and related to what are their thoughts on this first voluntary, which is a very sui generis cases, voluntary NDC, which countries that have an obligation are really having a hard time coming up with, let alone those that don't have an obligation. So please. Uh, Monica, in the middle. You can sit. Thank you. Yes. Minister Olaf. Yes, yes. Um, um, Before we go to the panel discussion, it's got the news that Mr. Gerson, Deputy Special Envoy for Climate of the Republic of Germany, is here for a special address. So please.
Uh, yes, good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very sorry that I was late. That was due to other things which took longer than expected. People who are experienced with COPs now know how that is. But thanks for inviting me, Madam President Osmani-Sadriu, Minister for the Environment, where is he? and members of the parliament from Kosovo, dear colleagues, distinguished guests, climate action enthusiasts also sitting on the panel. I thank for the invitation to speak on this very important event on Kosovo's national climate agenda. It's a special one because in terms of contributing its part to taking global climate action, Kosovo is still in a particularly difficult situation. It has not yet been able to become a member of UNFCCC, not of the Paris Agreement, and can neither directly participate here in the COP negotiations. Nor has it, despite its status as a developing country, sufficient access to international climate finance. We heard that. Because of that, Germany is particularly happy to take our Kosovo friends to this year's COP again, after an already successful joint mission to last year's COP27. For the next 2 years, 2 weeks, Dubai will be the place to be for all nations, showing their resolve to fighting global warming, to connecting, to finding new solutions, and we are happy to have your country also by our side. Kosovo, for maybe bringing Kosovo to the COP is not just a matter of climate justice. We live up to our responsibility to leave no one behind, also not Kosovo. But it's not only that, we are also doing this for reasons of selfishness. Small country, but it's still coal. We just heard that. It wants to get away from fossil fuels, but it will achieving this without help of others. As its political status remains open, its access to international climate finance is still largely limited. Because in order to keep 1.5 within reach, we need to have each and everyone on board, here at the COP, but also beyond. As the German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has put it, in the fight against global warming, every tenth of degree counts. And I can say that she has a particular passion also to bring Kosovo on board. Our bilateral relations with Kosovo are excellent. This year we are celebrating 50 years of official diplomatic relations, and it feels just natural to now expand our excellent relations also to the field of climate change. With last and this year's joint visit to COP, our joint endeavor of taking bold climate action together has just begun. I'm excited when I look at the progress this small country has achieved in terms of taking bold climate action within the space of just 1 year. You will hear about the details from the panel. But there is one to emphasize already, and that is, dear Madam President, dear Minister Environment Aliu, I would applaud you for the presentation of your first ever NDC, which we just listened to, even without having had the chance to also officially join the club of UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. That's really applaudable. Thank you for taking action voluntarily. That you take action voluntarily shows your true commitment to contributing your part in the fight against global warming. It shows that you see yourself as part of the family, that you live on your small share of our joint global responsibility, and that you seriously want to help preserve our precious planet for our future generations. Germany stands ready to continue to support you wherever we can in advancing your national climate agenda. In particular, that's true for the Foreign Ministry. We will not stop at COP28. To the contrary, this is just the beginning of a wonderful joint climate partnership, and Germany is very much looking forward to cooperating with you in the future. I wish you all lots of success at this year's COP. Let's keep 1.5 in reach. The motto of our pavilion, and that is perfect also for this event here, is ambitious, joint, and together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the special address. Now back to the panel. I'm going to start with Minister Aliu first. And as we've seen, Kosovo has shown quite a lot of commitments when it comes to climate action by independently initiating the development of voluntary NDC and approving the climate change law, but also prioritizing projects for adaptation. So Kosovo has not only done that, but in fact, it has also integrated climate change into considerations when it comes to central budgeting, and that's strong. That basically sends a very strong signal when it comes to commitments internally for climate mitigation and adaptation. So, despite these practical steps that we've taken, do you perceive any signs in international support, multilateral support, or indication to Kosovo, although outside of UNFLC, will have a chance to tap into climate finance when it comes to both mitigation and adaptation that it so necessarily needs? That's my first question. And then I want your on whether you're optimistic that it will change, or pessimistic on what is your perception on how we move forward.
Thank you, Agim. First, Madam President Vjosa Osmani, Your Excellency, Mr. Gerd Topman, engineer, it's a pleasure to be together. Ms. Monica Figai, Climate and Just Transition Expert on Energy Community Secretariat, Mr. Christoph Balz, Director of German Watch, Mr. Pablo Yer. It's a great pleasure to have you. Also, Miss Ambassador of Arabian is hosting us. Be here at first. Thanks again to the German state that made possible for us for the second time to be a part of COP. This actually being for the second time here, it's like a point where we can at our work comparing to the last COP. Yes, from the last COP till now, we have adopted. We have from our perspective, we believe that adopted in Parliament. Then we have established the Climate Change Council and for decarbonization, energy transition, and plan for energy and climate. And we hope that for the next COP, we will come with already a NDC that in order to show our commitment that what is to be done by our side, we are there to do it. Also beside it, we have some projects on adaptation. And yes, the fact that we were present also on the GEF conference, it is a optimistic sign that we might have more access to the funds, to the UNFCCC mechanisms. There is still not a specific promise or sign on this. What is to be done by our side is that we will continue taking part in this and lobbying. For the last COP, we had more meetings in which we were lobbying for and to be seen that we are we are being impacted by climate change, and we should not be left behind. We are there. We are managing the country. We are doing a lot. We have also adopted the strategy for transport, as you mentioned, and I think by this commitment to doing it, we will open these doors, and we will need this access to these vertical funds. For example, especially when it is a matter for we had help or bilateral agreements and bilateral help when it is a matter of mitigation parts. As for mitigation, there are different helps that we are getting in order to reduce our emissions, and there is a lot that has been done just on the last year. But when it is a matter of adaptation, funds. And in order to have access to this, at the moment, we are still quite far and we are, in a way, quite alone. You mentioned that Kosovo is in a critical position. We need to have huge projects in order to manage our floods, in order to have water on the dry seasons. We are touched by drought and the floods. There are projects of different reservoirs that will manage our floods, and at the same time that can be used as a potential for green energy production. Kosovo has had a quite limited capacities of water. Comparing to the region, we are in the most bad position. We are in a critical position by be impacted by climate change. Being a part of Mediterranean, it means that we are going to be impacted. And in this position, without having enough, with limited resource of water, we are quite in a critical situation that need to be seen for this. I hope there are signs. I hope that on the next COP, when we will come, there might be open a door to be also to come as a Kosovo, and our president and our institution to be here on your own position to represent ourselves directly. Thank you.
Yeah, we're also honored to have Mr. Gert-Jan Kopman, the DG NEAR director, and we know that DG NEAR plays a significant role when it comes to supporting the Western Balkans and Kosovo in the journey towards EU integration through different mechanisms that the EU has set in terms of also the alignment with the green agenda that the EU has. That says, I would want to have your perspective on how do you see EU assisting Kosovo and the Western Balkans generally when it comes to building the resilience that is much needed to climate change and be able to implement adaptation measures. So are there any mechanisms that are being explored by Vjosa in this case to address this aspect of climate cooperation?
Let me congratulate President Osmani and Minister Aliu for producing this first voluntary document, which testifies to your commitment not just to fighting climate change, but also to joining the EU. Because let me be very clear, as part of your process of integration, developing your energy policies, your environment policies, and your climate change policies is absolutely critical. And therefore, we see this from a double perspective and welcome it very much. It's also underscored by the fact that you produced a national energy and climate plan, which you submitted to the energy community. I think there's a colleague here who will speak about that later. But seen also from the perspective of your European path. Now, in terms of support, what can we bring to support you in this process? First of all, I should say that we have already under the economic and investment plan set aside about 300 million euros, which has mobilized another 770 million euros, so a bit over €1 billion for climate and energy policies. But with our new growth plan for the Western Balkans, we're actually inviting you to develop a strategy that boosts growth and that accelerates your European path. And in doing so, only takes account of the need for transformation in the energy sector. So there's additional funding, but it is conditional on environmental reforms, and it's also conditional on solving some of the regional problems that hold the region back in respect of the functioning of the common regional market and your relationship with Serbia. So there's a lot riding on climate change, on European integration. There is money available under the EU budget, and I really look forward to working together very closely. We had your Deputy Prime Minister in Brussels only a few days ago with very ambitious ideas, which I very much welcome, and I'm sure that we will be able to work on developing this plan with its very strong energy and climate change component being very prominently funded by the EU. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gobin. Thank you a lot. Moving to Ms. Figa, who's the climate and just transition expert for the Energy Community Secretariat, wherein Kosovo is a contracting party. And it has a lot of obligations to adhere to, especially with the decarbonization pathway that is currently on the works. So we wanted to ask you, given your expertise in just transitions, especially for the region, and your sort of role in supervision of the alignment with Kosovo, that Kosovo energy strategy has with EU energy acquis, how do you particularly see how do you see Kosovo navigating this just transition when it faces limitations on international climate finance? And how do you think these disparities in the same level in the playing field when it comes to Western Balkans in general? Because in comparison to other countries in the Western Balkans, Kosovo is not in the same level playing field as we said today. So how do you see a way forward to ensure a fair and inclusive path towards the just transition of the energy sector?
Yes, thank you for this very good question. It is true. In this context, you're not on the same level field. You're also one of the smallest, but you're very visible. And in the context of climate finance, I think, as we already touched upon a bit, it's not happening in a political vacuum. You basically need two things: climate ambition, which you have in the voluntary NDC. And I would just like to take a very brief stop here and actually congratulate you on two things. First of all, congrats for the NDC. But actually, climate ambition is not new to Kosovo. You already mentioned the Sofia Declaration, but actually, 1 year ago, Kosovo and other contracting parties committed to 2030 climate energy targets. So just under a year ago, you had such a commitment. And what I notice now, and this is the first time I'm seeing this NDC, is actually that within 1 year, you chose to follow a more ambitious target because your NDC is more ambitious than what you agreed to last year. So this is my double congratulation. Um, so this is one thing. So seeing the goal, and you have it there, but you also need something else. You need a plan how to achieve it. And this is, I think, to what Director General Kopman was hinting at. The National Energy and Climate Plan, we have actually received it, yes, a draft version a few months ago, and we're reviewing it right now. But this is such an important document because basically it shows how Kosovo plans to cut emissions in all of its sectors. So basically, it's a development plan for Kosovo until 2030. And to such an extent, it, as an NECP, it should pinpoint what should be invested, when, and where. So actually, it's a financing roadmap. And this is very, I think, important because, first of all, investors and international donors, whoever they may be, there's also a lot of EU financing available, first of all, need predictability and they need certainty. They need a plan. So having such a document is already a great way forward. What's more, it also ensures there is coherency, coordination between donors. Because if they all look at the same document and they have the same vision of a goal where you want to reach, it becomes much more easier and much more efficient for financial spending in Kosovo. And maybe my last point, the issue of consistency. It is very important that all the climate documents are telling the same story, that you recommit again and again to the same objective, to the same path, because it also strengthens your credibility with whoever is your financing partner on the other side. So, yes, from me, I think that's how I would address the question. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Figa. Moving to Mr. Christopher Balls, director of the German Watch, in which we kept close coordination. We had a meeting also at COP27 together. We discussed these issues together too. Thank you for being here. We wanted to ask you a question related to the work that German Watch does currently, and what is your perspective in terms of because you always emphasize the importance of equitable treatment in international climate negotiations. So, what in your role what do you think is the role of civil society when it comes to advocating for fair and inclusive climate finance mechanisms for Kosovo and other countries that are facing similar situations when it comes to access to climate finance. We saw yesterday an agreement on the loss and damage fund, which Kosovo cannot begin to think of. In fact, despite being a country with very minimal emissions historically, and having no historical emissions compared to other countries that are the biggest emitters, we are still left. So considering this, how do you believe this will change, and what is the role that society can play in really making Kosovo's voice and other nations that are finance be heard?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation. Let me start first to say a few words why I might be here. We have started to cooperate with the civil society in Kosovo in 2014-15, and many of the things which are now in the NDC, we have discussed at this stage. We hoped for this, that this might happen. And now we see, wow, a lot of this is in the NDC, in the voluntary NDC at the moment. So congratulations for this. We discussed at this stage about the coal and lignite situation. We discussed about the railway system. And so there are two important elements in this context. And we discussed this last year. I see really the progress in this regard. Really congratulations in this regard, first of all. And then, but coming to your question, leave no one behind, the president made this point, is a very strong pillar of the SDGs and of the climate agenda. And we have now a loss and damage fund, which is supposed to have direct access for all countries, vulnerable countries and regions, without one exception. And so clearly this is not fair from for a country which is vulnerable. So to make this point in the public and to discuss it is one point. Then on the other side, we know the UN rules and we know how to change those rules, and that we need a consensus on this. If you look to the situation, the polarization with Russia at the moment, I'm not very optimistic that we get a breakthrough in this regard quite soon. So just to be serious, and you know this as well, I guess. So one thing is to address this point. The other one is how realistic is it on the UN level, in what time frame to change it? But then for us, it's a crucial issue to say, but nevertheless, you are vulnerable and you need the support necessary to move forward in this regard. So we look at this in this context. What can the German government do? What can the EU do to support this in a meaningful way? So it's not that because the UN funds are not open, that no support can be delivered. And this would be very interesting to look for this path in detail. And with your ambition you are showing, I just saw the first presentation of the NDC, so I'm not able really to comment on it in detail. But if it is as ambitious as it looks, and if it also is the ambition, I see the vulnerability of your country regarding food security, regarding water issues. So there is clearly a vulnerability. And if there is a good plan how to address this, I think there should be a way to co-finance this in a meaningful way. And we are always open trying to support this in this context. If you have other ideas, we are also open to discuss this. But I do not want to give you to make you any hopes for things where I at the moment think it's not realistic that we reach a fast progress here on the UN level for the country.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brawls. And For closing remarks, since we're run out of time, Minister Aliu, for closing remarks, please.
Actually, yeah, it is true. It's easy to do commitment. It's easy to draft a strategy and to adopt it and to put it somewhere in archives. Starting doing it is the most difficult part. The commitment of 2030 for energy that has been done when we came last year on COP, it was already done, and we were mentioning it there. And then we started to see the difficulties that are in front of us in order to achieve it. At first, where are those solar panels are going to be? Where they are going to be installed? Our national spatial plan adopted already and municipal development plans already adopted. They didn't have on their no areas identified already for that. So what we had to do, so this was the first task that we put to ourselves. We immediately built the maps for solar and for wind energy and adopted the transformation of the spatial plans in order to be in the line with this commitment, and that is already has been done. Then how to bring those 100 megawatts on rooftops, since 75 of our building stock is informal. So how to give a permission for installation of a illegal house. And again, we had to change our subsidiary laws for not considering them as the construction works. So that can be done. Not just this, also the making better performance, energy performance, so improving energy performance at the buildings, it has the same problem. So we have always to adopt these technical procedures that will make open this. So we are having that in mind, and we are building a plan. And I believe that the same thing is going to be done with other parts. For example, spatial planning, again, we have to do the mobility plans of every municipality in order to have to implement now the strategy for multimodal transport. And even in social housing projects, for example, we put the third component of making better life on this informal stock of the building in order to improve them, and then the state is going to be directly involved on improving the energy performance of the existing stock buildings, not just from the perspective of social housing, but also from the perspective of climate change. And this is something that together with in the government, we are installing the policies that every capital project, capital investment is going to be done in our country is going to be seen through the policies of climate change. I mean, in every sphere we are actually trying to install this because we are aware that our determination on this will open us the doors that are quite difficult to open. And I believe that by also we will open the door and UNFT will see soon.
Thank you, Minister. Your Excellency, thank you for honoring this side event. Dear guests, dear Minister, thank you, everyone. We hope to see you next year to discuss the and to discuss also adaptation. And hopefully, we are in a new era. We thank you for your cooperation and we'll be in touch when it comes to development and implementation of voluntary NDC. Thank you.